In the first 9 days of 2026, U.S. Navy forces seized 5 oil tankers in coordinated maritime strikes. One tanker, called the Marinera, was hunted for 2 weeks across the North Atlantic with a Russian submarine trying to protect it. The British Royal Navy assisted. American destroyers captured it between Iceland and Scotland. The Navy also seized the MT Sophia, the Olina, and 2 others, all in 9 days. When most people saw these headlines, they thought it was just sanctions enforcement. But it wasn't. Why is the U.S. Navy seizing Venezuelan oil tankers? The answer reveals the real plan. On January 3, 2026, U.S. military forces launched Operation Absolute Resolve. Over 150 American aircraft attacked Caracas. Delta Force commandos raided President Nicolas Maduro's compound and arrested him. The real story isn't about Maduro's arrest. It's about what came 3 days later. The tanker seizures revealed the actual naval strategy. But before, if you want to stay updated on major maritime operations like this, subscribe to Shipline for exclusive naval coverage. The U.S. Navy is hunting shadow fleet vessels. These are roughly 3,000 ships worldwide that operate outside normal maritime rules to transport sanctioned oil. They turn off tracking systems, fake GPS coordinates, change ship names and flags, and switch ownership through fake companies. One vessel loads oil in Venezuela while broadcasting false positions, transfers cargo at sea to a second ship, then a third completes delivery. Nobody knows who owns what or where it's going. The Marinera is a perfect example. It's a Russian-flagged tanker carrying Venezuelan oil. When U.S. Navy forces pursued it, the ship fled. A Russian submarine came to help escort it. But the Navy caught it anyway, with the British Navy providing surveillance support. This wasn't a random intercept. This was coordinated naval strategy against an evasion network. The shadow fleet causes real problems. These older vessels operate outside maritime rules and cause environmental disasters with numerous oil spills. But they work, moving billions of dollars of sanctioned oil every year across international waters. The U.S. Navy seizure campaign targets this system. In just 9 days, the Navy captured 5 vessels carrying Venezuelan oil. The coordinated strikes happened across 2 oceans simultaneously, requiring significant naval assets including carrier groups, destroyers, and Coast Guard cutters. The USS Gerald R. Ford carrier group was deployed to the region. This represents one of the largest Caribbean maritime operations in recent years. These tanker seizures aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a blockade ordered December 16, 2025. The blockade applies to Venezuelan oil tankers anywhere in the world, preventing sanctioned oil shipments and controlling Venezuela's maritime commerce entirely. Here's the naval strategy. Venezuela has no functional navy to defend its tankers. The country's air defense was neutralized during Operation Absolute Resolve. U.S. Navy destroyers now patrol Caribbean and Atlantic approaches to Venezuelan ports. Venezuelan tankers cannot move without U.S. permission. The blockade creates complete maritime control. Venezuela's interim government must negotiate with Washington. Tankers can't leave port. Revenue stops flowing. The economy collapses. This is textbook naval blockade strategy, and watching it unfold in real time is why maritime professionals subscribe to Shipline. They want to understand how these operations work, and we deliver that analysis with verified information and expert insights. The shadow fleet represents where sanctioned oil moves when normal channels close. Russia uses shadow fleet vessels because of Ukraine sanctions. Iran uses them for the same reason. Venezuela has used them for years to circumvent previous sanctions. The U.S. Navy systematically hunts and seizes these vessels. This requires advanced maritime intelligence. The Navy uses satellite imagery, signals intelligence, and naval vessels to track shadow fleet movements. When targets are identified, Navy ships intercept. Navy personnel board vessels, secure crews, and document cargo. In cases like the Marinera, pursuit lasts weeks across multiple ocean basins. The Navy coordinates with international partners. The British Royal Navy assisted with the Marinera intercept, showing how the operation extends beyond U.S. naval forces alone. European maritime assets are involved, creating a coordinated international naval blockade. Venezuela's oil infrastructure is catastrophic. Production collapsed from 3 million barrels per day in the early 2000 years to 840,000 barrels per day now. Wells are non-functional. Pipelines are broken. Processing units are offline. Power systems have failed. The Navy blockade prevents any produced oil from leaving the country, creating total economic leverage. Why focus on Venezuelan oil? American refineries along the Gulf Coast are designed to process heavy Venezuelan crude. About 70% of Gulf Coast refining capacity was built for this type of oil. American shale produces light crude, which doesn't use the specialized equipment. The heavy crude infrastructure sits underutilized. By controlling Venezuelan oil, the U.S. ensures this refining capacity gets used. China has been the primary buyer of Venezuelan oil, receiving 80% of exports. Russia invested heavily in Venezuelan oil and supplied weapons to the previous government. A Russian submarine tried to help the Marinera escape U.S. Navy pursuit. Russian naval vessels have been spotted in the region. But Russia is dealing with its own situation regarding Ukraine and has limited ability to challenge U.S. naval dominance in the Western Hemisphere. The blockade also targets Iran, which used Venezuelan oil to get chemical additives for its own sanctioned crude. Maduro faces federal charges including narco-terrorism and cocaine trafficking. The indictment alleges 200 to 250 tons of cocaine move through Venezuela annually. That's a serious criminal matter. But from a Navy perspective, Maduro's removal opened the door for the current blockade and tanker seizure campaign. The military operation removed a head of state who would have challenged Navy control of Venezuelan waters. Venezuela's economy collapsed. Inflation reached 130,000% in 2018. 40% of the population faces food insecurity. 8 million people fled the country. This creates a humanitarian crisis, but the blockade contributes to the economic conditions that drive it. The tanker seizures aren't random operations. They're systematic. The Navy is breaking the shadow fleet network that moves sanctioned oil. 5 seizures in 9 days demonstrates the operation's intensity. This pace will likely continue. Is this legal under international law? The United Nations criticized it as a violation of the UN Charter. The International Court of Justice said the operation breached international law. But from a naval operations perspective, the U.S. Navy maintains it is enforcing existing sanctions and operating in international waters. The real question is whether this strategy works long-term. Restoring Venezuelan oil production takes years and massive investment, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars. American companies might invest if the political situation stabilizes, or they might wait. The Navy's role is maintaining the blockade and controlling maritime movement of oil until a new structure emerges. The shadow fleet will adapt. Vessels will find new routes. New ships will enter the network. The Navy will continue hunting and seizing them. This becomes a sustained maritime operation, not a one-time action. But right now, 5 tankers seized in 9 days shows the intensity of U.S. naval commitment to controlling Venezuelan oil movement. The Navy has the forces, technology, and international support to enforce this blockade indefinitely. Let me know what you guys think about all this, because the real plan is simple from a naval perspective. Control Venezuelan waters. Prevent sanctioned oil tankers from leaving. Maintain that blockade until new political and economic arrangements are made. The tanker seizures are how that gets enforced.